Hello Colorado gardeners and Rocky Mountain rose enthusiasts. This is the Front Range Gardener, and I just scored this rose bush at my local big box hardware store for $12.49. Follow along and I'll give you some tips on planting roses in the Rocky Mountain region as I go ahead and plant this one. When I first started planting roses here in Colorado, I made a big fundamental mistake. And that was, I did not check to see if my rose bushes would be hardy in USDA's Hardiness Zone 5, like here in Colorado. So we'll check the label on this one, and I think you'll find that we're okay with this. Gardeners in warmer climates like to plant their roses from bare root stock. And bare root stock is grown in California and is ready to place into the ground in February. In Colorado, that's much too early in the season to be placing plants in the ground. That was one of the first mistakes I made, was trying to buy bare root stock, and it was already leafing out in February when I needed to plant in April. In the Rocky Mountain regions, we tend to buy roses that have already been potted, and a good quality nursery will plant their bare root stock in pots in their greenhouses in March, and then we'll be able to sell them to you in June, July, and August. One of the things that cold weather gardeners have to do with their roses is plant the crown of the rose below soil level. This will insulate the crown on the coldest nights of the winter. If we can keep our crown alive, the rose will recover the next spring. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to prune off these lower leaves so that I can plant the crown below soil level. So I have pruned off all of the lower leaves and a couple of dead canes, and you can see it's pretty cleaned up down there, and I can plant that crown maybe an inch or two below the level of the soil. And then later in the late fall, I'll cover it with some mulch to provide some further insulation. In order to find space for my new rose, this burning bush has to go. The deer really did a number on it this summer, and it is in my line of other roses in the garden. So, see you later. Well, this burning bush didn't want to come out of the ground easily. It had been there a few years, and it really never thrived in this spot. And as I developed my landscape, it was just out of place. The great thing about gardening is we can just dig up our mistakes. Bye-bye. Where did I put my beer? Cheers. I'm planting this rose in mid-August, so it's important to know what my goals are for the rest of this year. It's well past any time that this rose could bloom. In fact, I'm not even going to cut the rose hips off. My big concern for the next few months is, while the ground is still relatively warm, I want to encourage the roots to develop. So I'm going to try something new for me. The nutrient that encourages root development is phosphorus. And so I've found this bone meal, which is high in phosphorus and low in nitrogen, and I'm going to amend the soil with bone meal to encourage the root growth over the next few months. Bone meal happens to be an organic amendment, and it has 17% phosphorus, so that's pretty good. The hole left behind by the burning bush is pretty good. I don't have to dig it out much further. I do like to dig a hole that's 3 times the width of the plant. The rain and precipitation, generally the water is found in the first 12 inches of the soil, so we want to have a nice loose soil in the top 12 inches for the roots to grow into. Alright, let's see what our roots look like. Overall, the roots look pretty good. They're not too root bound, but we do want to break them up And don't be gentle. Break up the roots so they're encouraged to grow outwards. All right, I've placed my rose in the hole and it's looking pretty good. Next steps are to amend the soil and then backfill. I'm going to add some soil amendment. And now I'm going to add my fertilizer, the bone meal. If you are planting earlier in the season, say in the spring, you will want to use a more balanced fertilizer that has nitrogen, because at that time of year you do want to encourage new growth. Ooh, look at that. All right, let's backfill about halfway. You don't have to hold the camera while you do your backfill. And I like to water it in to settle the soil. Many gardeners were taught to stomp on the soil to settle it, but I think that runs the risk of excess soil compaction. So watering it in, I think, is a more gentle way to go about it. Okay, let's backfill the rest of the way. I'm going to put the camera down so I can do this properly. So I've backfilled all the way, and let's check the crown. See that I've got the crown an inch or two below the soil surface, and that looks pretty good. Let's water it in again to settle the soil. Excellent. I'm going to hook this rose up to my existing drip line. However, my drip line is timed to run for mature plants, and that simply won't water frequently enough for a newly planted rose. So I will have to continue watering probably at least once a week through the end of October and into November. Okay, I've installed my drip line. Let's run the drip irrigation and just make sure that it's working. Okay, the drip line seems to be working, so I'm going to rake the soil level and then cover with mulch. And there we have it, a new rose bush for $12.49. And I think that bush is going to give me happy gardening.